Live Rush albums. The band released 11 of them between 1976 and 2015, and today I'm going to share how they stack up in my humble opinion. It wasn't an easy task, and I had to make some tough decisions, but I had a blast doing it. So let's take a look at my least favorite release at number 11 all the way to the best of the best at number 1. Let's face it, there's no such thing as a bad live Rush album, but something has to come in last place, and that happens to be A Show of Hands. Released in 1989, the songs were recorded from various shows from the '88 Hold Your Fire tour in Birmingham, UK, New Orleans, Phoenix, and San Diego. They also snuck in a pair of tunes from the '86 Power Windows tour. The record is 74 minutes 22 seconds long with a total of 14 tracks. Highlights include the Three Stooges intro and a great version of the Big Money to open the show. Marathon and Force 10 are some of my favorite tracks, and who could forget that epic extended jam at the end of Closer to the Heart. To this day, that's still my favorite version of that song. A Show of Hands is dominated by Rush's 80s synth-era songs. In fact, Closer to the Heart is the only track released before 1977. So that's why I've got it ranked last, right? Wrong. The Show of Hands album comes in last because the video version exists. Released on VHS and Laserdisc in 1989, the video version was recorded entirely at the first two Birmingham shows, unlike the audio version recorded from multiple shows and venues. And oh man, the songs they included but were left out of the audio album. Spirit of Radio, Tom Sawyer, 2112, The Villa Strangiato, In the Mood, to name just a few. I simply can't listen to that audio version anymore because it just makes me think of all the great content I could be enjoying by watching the video instead. In fact, I ditched the official audio album quite a while ago, and when I'm in the mood to show my hands, I fire up my bootleg copy of the same show. 22 tracks and over an hour and a half long, the bootleg is compiled from all the audio and video tracks from the Birmingham show, and it's the closest you can get to recreating that concert in its entirety. If you're interested in where you can get your hands on free bootlegs like this, like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments. I'll hook you up. Exit Stage Left was released in the fall of 1981 and features songs recorded from the band's Permanent Waves and Moving Pictures tour in Glasgow, Scotland and Montreal. The record comes in at 76 minutes 36 seconds long with a total of 13 tracks. Highlights include Jacob's Ladder, one of my favorite Rush songs, and Brune's Bane, a beautiful little classical guitar number that segues into the trees. Exit Stage Left is no doubt a fan favorite, however, to me it's too produced and doesn't really feel like a live album. Each song fades in and out with a gap of silence in between tracks, and at times there's barely any audience noise to speak of. Like A Show of Hands, the cherry-picking of individual songs from different shows and different nights takes away some of the experience of a live performance. All I know is I rarely spin up Exit Stage Left for a listen these days when there's so much other live Rush to choose from. All the World's a Stage, released in 1976, was recorded at Massey Hall in Toronto during the 2112 tour. At an hour and a half long, the record presents the show in its entirety and, according to the band, marks the end of the first chapter of Rush. Highlights include Bytor and the Snow Dog in 2112, shortened slightly due to stage time constraints. A young Geddy Lee belts out all the high notes, squealing and shrieking like his bell-bottoms are on fire, and it's awesome. Unlike Exit Stage Left, All the World's a Stage is raw and basic, but in a good way. The band has a great energy and sounds excellent. This one finally feels like you're there in the crowd, enjoying Rush's hometown show at an iconic venue that holds a special place in the band's heart and the city of Toronto as a whole. Really, the only reason this one ranks towards the bottom of the list is due to the fact that the record features only songs from their first 4 albums. Now, that's hardly the band's fault since, they hadn't gotten around to actually writing and recording the rest of their 15 studio albums yet. But still, when you consider the depth of songs featured on later live albums in their career, I can't rank At West higher than a 9. R30 30th Anniversary Tour. The title pretty much says it all. Recorded in September of 2004 in Frankfurt, Germany, the R30 CD included with the deluxe DVD was released in November 2005. To reduce overlap with Rush and Rio, 8 songs from the playlist didn't make it in the recording, including Bravado, One Little Victory, Bytor, La Villa Strangiato, YYZ, Red Sector A, The Trees, and Secret Touch. That's a shame since those are some pretty great songs in that list, but I guess I understand the decision. Maybe? I don't know. Personally, I think they should have left them in, but in their defense, 5 of these songs were later released in various DVDs and compilations. R30 is a short one compared to other live albums released in the later half of Rush's discography. We get 22 tracks at just a smidge over 2 hours. Highlights include the amazing R30 Overture to kick off the show, an instrumental mashup of early Rush songs. I remember when I heard it for the first time, I wasn't aware of what it was and I was confused at first. Wait a minute, what song is this? It finally clicked, and man, it's still one of my go-tos on those summer afternoon windows down, volume up drives in the car. R30 starts off strong with the aforementioned overture, followed by The Spirit of Radio and Force 10. Where the album starts to wane is on disc 2. It starts off with Between the Wheels, which isn't a bad song but not one of my favorites, followed by Mystic Rhythms, which I've always considered a dud. Then we get Neil's drum solo. If I'm being honest, I usually listen to his solos once, and after that's in an automatic skip no matter which record I'm listening to. I mean, yeah, the guy's arguably the best rock drummer in history, but I don't find listening to his solos all that entertaining. Next we get Resist. I've never cared too much for that song either, and even less so for the acoustic version. Heartful of Soul? Look, I get the Feedback album of cover songs was fun for the guys to do, but none of the songs resonate with me, and I definitely don't need to hear them play live. I'm also not crazy about Summertime Blues and Crossroads for my encore either. Skip and skip. R30 is frustrating. There's some great stuff here, but the decision to cut out some really good songs doesn't make any sense to me, and I don't want to hear my beloved Rush play cover songs. The DVD or Blu-ray is fun to watch, but for a listening-only affair, it's not one of my favorites. Sorry, R30. You were an important tour for many reasons, but your CD isn't getting any higher than 8 on my list. Clockwork Angels Tour was released in 2013 with performances recorded in Phoenix, Dallas, and San Antonio. The 3-disc set features 31 tracks with a running time of just over 3 hours long. Highlights include mostly the entire Clockwork Angels album, backed by a live string ensemble. Neil plays a mini drum solo in the middle of Headlong Flight, and Alex plays a beautiful extended intro into Halo Effect titled Peaks Repose. The string ensemble sticks around after the break and plays along with the band for a few songs. Clockwork Angels Tour leaves me feeling conflicted. When I stack it up against the rest of the live albums, it's a little too specific in a few ways. For the first third of the concert, the band made the decision to stick heavily with songs from the synth era. I think if I'd seen this concert in person and didn't know the set list ahead of time, after the first few songs I would have been like, I see what they're doing here. Okay. That's cool, but when are we going to get around to Free Will or 2112? I get that sense from the audience response. A little muted, a little confused maybe? As for playing almost the entire Clockwork album, I love it. I consider that record a masterpiece, but I know that opinion isn't shared by a good chunk of Rush fans. If you're one of those people, first you have to get through all the synth stuff, and then through an entire album you may not care for to finally get to the quote-unquote good stuff in the final set. The album as a whole is too divisive in that regards, and I just don't find myself listening to it all that often. Rush in Rio. Here we have a 3-disc set released in 2003, recorded in Rio de Janeiro on the final night of the Vapor Trails tour. At 40,000 people, this was the band's second largest crowd after the massive 60,000 from the previous night's Sao Paulo show. The album comes in at just under 3 hours, 31 tracks in all. It was recorded on what Alex Lifeson described as a somewhat primitive Brazilian recording truck. And did I mention the band wasn't able to get a sound check in before the show? It's an achievement they were even able to pull off the concert, much less refine it into an official release. Highlights? Well, there's a dandy, and I'm sure you already know I'm going to say it's the audience. There's your standard audience noise on most albums, and then there's Rio, a league of their own. And it's not just the large number of fans, it's their enthusiasm and participation. They chanted along on YYZ, clapped in unison on songs like Bravado, and even shouted their own "Hey" routine in La Villa Strangiato. Rush in Rio offers a great mix of songs from a wide range of their material, and I love Alex's guitar tone on this one. It seems to me he gravitates to the sound from their most recent studio album, and you can feel the heaviness from Vapor Trails played on older tunes like The Pass and Free Will. And let's not forget his classic freeform jazz scat rant thing he does in the middle of Villa Strangiato. It's hilarious and guaranteed to put a smile on your face. There's no doubt Rush in Rio is a significant milestone in Rush's career. However, as a listening experience, I'm not wild about it. Despite doing an amazing job mixing this album in the first place, like I mentioned earlier, it's still not that great. Geddy's vocals are way in the back and too quiet on some of the songs, and the low end can be overwhelming and muddy. I don't know. Do yourself a favor and watch the video version of this concert instead of giving it a listen. It's a much more enjoyable experience. Released in April of 2008, Snakes and Arrows Live features material recorded from 2 performances in the Netherlands during the first leg of the Snake and Arrows tour, of course. 9 of the 27 tracks are from Snakes and Arrows, and the whole album comes in right around 2.5 hours long. Highlights include seldom played songs like Entre Nous, Circumstances, and A Passage to Bangkok. I really enjoyed the selection of songs here. As a fan of the Snakes and Arrows studio album, I don't really mind that a third of the concert is from that record, but I could see how some fans could list that as a negative. I don't know, I really embraced Rush's later albums over the last few years, and to me Snakes and Arrows is a showcase of the trio's musicianship at the top of their game. The band really seemed to be enjoying themselves during this period. I rewatched the video version of this concert in preparing for this video, and you can tell they're just having fun out there. You don't have to look any further than the Professor. Usually Neil Peart plays with a scowling intensity behind his kit, but he does more smiling and goofing around during this show than I've ever seen him do before. That comes through loud and clear on the audio recording, which is why this one sits towards the top of my list. Grace Under Pressure Tour Live was recorded at Maple Leaf Gardens in Toronto in 1984. The concert was initially released as video only on Betamax and VHS in 1986. A Laserdisc version came out in '88, and finally it hit DVD in 2007. The audio CD was included as part of the Rush Replay X3 box set in 2006, and again as a standalone CD in 2009. Despite all these different versions of this particular concert floating around, Grace Under Pressure Tour Live definitely flies under the radar when it comes to officially released live performances. The album running time is 1 hour 18 minutes from 16 tracks. Highlights include the intro to The Weapon, where a howling Joe Flaherty, even though he's dressed up as a vampire, not a werewolf, instructs the crowd to put on their 3D glasses. Otherwise, they'll only enjoy the show in 1/2 D. The band was really on fire the night of this show, playing with great energy, and on some songs the tempo is nuts. YYZ and Finding My Way, for example, are played as fast as I've ever heard them. You have to wonder if maybe the guys did a few bumps during intermission. It was the 80s after all. The mix on this album is outstanding as well. Geddy's bass is clear as a bell, and it sounds like he's standing right in front of you, banging away on that goofy headless Steinberger L2. Overall, this is a solid, fun, and underrated release. Different Stages was released as a 3-disc album in 1998. Disc 1 and 2 recorded mostly from the 97 Test for Echo tour and a few tracks from the 94 Counterparts tour. Disc 3 is from the 1978 A Farewell to Kings tour in London because, well, why not? It's a nice bonus. Altogether, this thing runs over 3 hours long with a whopping 40 tracks. It's the longest live release from the band at the time when it hit the store shelves. Yep, those still existed in 1998. Highlights include the entire 2112 suite with not a minute omitted from the original, the only recorded live example in existence. We get treated to a mini bass solo at the tail end of Driven and an epic extended jam at the end of Closer to the Heart. This one may beat the Show of Hands version, but for me it's too close to call. The audience noise in Different Stages is excellent, and it really adds to the experience. I think a microphone or two was deliberately placed in the crowd as we hear individual voices throughout the show. It's an interesting touch, and I like it. Considering the depth of content and excellent set list, Different Stages earns my spot 3 on the list. Time Machine 2011 Live in Cleveland is a double CD released in 2011. Like most of the later live performances, a video version on DVD and Blu-ray is available, but like the rest of the list, we'll be concentrating on the audio version only. 26 tracks for just a hair under 2.5 hours. Highlights include a really great version of Presto, which I never would have expected, a rarely played Stick It Out, a polka intro to La Villa Strangiato, and a reggae intro to Working Man. The guys had fun with this one. They also included 2 songs from the yet-to-be-released Clockwork Angels album, BU2B and Caravan. At the time, this was a real treat hearing these new and excellent songs for the first time. And did I mention they played the entire Moving Pictures album from start to finish? Definitely a nice surprise to celebrate the 30th anniversary of their most popular album. I really struggled to think of a single negative thing to say about this record. Great set list, perfectly mixed, fun to listen to, and even better to watch. Time Machine, you earned my runner-up spot. How could the number one spot go to anything other than R40? The band's final tour, a celebration of a career that spans over 40 years, R40 is a masterpiece that goes back in time, covering songs from 2012's Clockwork Angels all the way to their debut album from 1974, in chronological order no less. At over 3 hours long, 23 songs, as well as 7 bonus tracks, R40 was the perfect way for the band to go out at the top of their game. Yes, okay, I see you, elephant in the room. Let's talk. Geddy Lee's vocal cords in 2015 were 62 years old, and unfortunately in R40 it shows. I'll admit the first time I listened to it, it was a little off-putting. He struggles to hit those high notes, especially when we get towards the tail end of the show. Lakeside Park is especially a bit cringy. But you know what? He's still one of the best bassists in the world, a rock legend, and he deserves our respect, damn it. After the first time I listened to R40, I accepted the vocals for what they are, and it hasn't bothered me since. I got past it. This isn't Geddy from All the World's a Stage, and that's fine, because R40 is still so good. The Anarchist opens the show, followed by Headlong Flight with its mini drum solo. Then it's Far Cry, followed by the best version of the main monkey business you'll ever hear. Perfect example of a song played live that makes the studio album version seem like a dud by comparison. And how about when they played Losing It? Not only is it the first time they've done that song live, but Ben Ming shows up for the violin part, just like he did to record it for the Signals album over 30 years prior. My favorite part of the show closes out set 2 on disc 2, starting off with Jacob's Ladder, Hemisphere's Prelude, Cygnus X1 including Neil's solo, Closer to the Heart, Xanadu, and 2112. I tell you, it's like they wrote this set list just for me. They close out the encore with an absolutely smoking version of Working Man, and knowing what we know now, we hear that bittersweet farewell from Dirk to end the show.
We hope maybe one day we'll meet again. Thank you so much!
So there you have it, my ranked Rush live albums from worst to first. If you disagree with me, and I know you do, let me know in the comments how you'd rank them and we'll discuss. Thanks for watching.